you where we got to with the armature. So I did shave down the mandible in this area quite a bit. A lot happier with just how that looks compared to that anatomical skull. I have posed it as I suggested. I've turned the head off center and just raised the chin up just slightly, just so it's not straight on. A lot of the pose is going to be captured through the expression and how we apply some of the facial muscles, but that general pose is in place. Then I've added some mass just by hot gluing some high density foam on, so not looking at specific muscles, kind of filling in some of that mass where some of our trapezius would be, and again just filling in some of the mass and sturdying it up a little bit. I like that flexible neck system on this armature, but it's a little bit wobbly, so this is stuck into place now, and just with some styrofoam and cardboard I've been able to take up quite a bit of the mass. The other thing I did was I cut out the teeth, cut out a wedge that can come in and out, and when I place those false teeth that I have, they're a little small. They're still a little bit narrow for this skull, and that would look kind of unusual. So what I will do is I will use this chunk that I took out as my reference and build a set of teeth with polymer clay and set them in place. But I'm going to keep this so I can glue this back in afterwards, just so it stays with the armature. I'm also going to just form two spheres out of polymer. I'm not going to get fancy with the eyes. I'll just make them spheres the right size, and then I can plug those in later. So you remember with the miniature bust in polymer, once we had our armature, we covered it with a skin of polymer so that we had something to stick to. Going to do the same thing with the monster clay. So in this little crock pot, I've just melted just so it's just runny, like really heavy cream. You want to make sure it doesn't separate. You can sometimes see the yellowish oil starts to float. That means it's too hot. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a chip brush and just quickly cover it. I'm not doing any sort of sculpting. I'm just going to get a rough skin on the piece. So then when I start applying the forms, some of those primary forms, there's something to it there's something for that clay to stick to, so I'm not fighting with it against the foam. Okay. Before I do that, I do want to spend a minute talking about the reference. The reference is always important. It's tough to just start unless you're really familiar with anatomy to the point where you've done so many of these. You have things memorized, but even the pros, they use reference all the time. So get ready for some advanced visual effects, because here comes the reference image. When I'm working out a reference drawing for a sculpture, again, one that's based in human anatomy, I spend less time drawing the character design aspect, the concept art, and I think more about the anatomy and the geometry. So one of the first things I'm looking for in a drawing like this that was based on those a series of photographs I took is shapes like this, right? This fat pad here in the cheek that's going to fill it out, and then how this one, that same pad, how it drops down because of the direction of the mouth. and how the nose appears to kind of twist, right? And looking at this major shape in here, and those kind of flat spots on the side of your head. So I'm looking more at that. A shape like this is important, this eyelid. Okay. I'm looking at that more than I'm looking at any sort of character design. For me, that comes a little bit later because if I don't have the anatomy and the geometry down first, then it, as I've said multiple times, just not as convincing. So the other thing I am looking for is I'm looking for directions. How are some of these shapes and these features? What do they look like compared to true horizontal or true vertical? So in this pose, I chose this pose because I knew I would be ending up sculpting the teeth closed again because I didn't want to have to lower that whole jaw. I opened up the teeth, but I want to keep the teeth together. So I knew that line would be horizontal, but that top lip takes off at an angle, and the nose, because that lip goes this way, the nose twists that way as well. Okay, so everything kind of gets pulled up by that sneer. It's not as simple as just the mouth changing shape. Everything changes shape as well. This eye wrinkles up, and this remains fairly flat over here. So those are some of the things I'm looking for when I'm studying the reference photo, because that will help me build the shapes. And we're back. Now we've got a good coat of monster clay all over our form, and so now we can start actually sculpting. And again, very similar approach to what we did with the miniature bust, where I'm just going to start laying on the primary forms, the larger muscles in the neck, some of those fat pads in the cheek, lids, brows, nose. I will sculpt the teeth and eyeballs as I mentioned earlier. So putting on those major forms, raking them down, putting on the secondary forms, raking them down, just building it up slow and steady. Something else that's interesting about the monster clay, because you can melt it into a liquid form, is that you can cast it into silicone molds. So this is just a quick silicone mold, and that is one of the nice properties about monster clay, is you can brush it on, but you can also mold it. You can also cast it, into a silicone mold, and then all the stuff that comes off just gets recycled. You can melt it down again and pour it into sheets, or just kind of keep some in the crock pot. Okay, so where I'm going to go next is I'm going to build the teeth and the eyeballs, and then start sculpting. All right, talk to you soon.